Her first lie wasn't in her words but in her envelopes. My stepmother, Isabella, had a gentle habit. She wrote letters by hand. I often saw her at the breakfast table, her hair perfectly coiffed, writing meticulously on smooth, faintly scented parchment. She'd seal them with a drop of crimson wax, imprinting them with a signet ring that had belonged to my father's mother. To my dear Aunt Clara, she'd say with a sigh, catching me watching, "The poor dear is in a home no one visits. It's the least I can do." My father, a kind and busy architect named Arthur, would beam. "Your heart is too big, Bella," he'd say, kissing her forehead. I wanted to believe it. Since my mother's death, the house had been a hollow, echoing place. Isabella, with her elegant silence and her supposed charity, had filled a void. But the hum of intuition, that quiet, persistent frequency, told me otherwise. The lies were too perfect, her past too vague, her sadness too deep for a woman who had supposedly traded up to a life of comfort. The revenge began, as it often does, not with a shout, but with a slip. A gust of wind from an open window caught a freshly written letter as she rose to answer the phone. It fluttered to the floor, and she didn't notice. The crimson seal was unbroken. I picked it up, not to read it, but to return it. That's when I saw the address. It wasn't addressed to an Aunt Clara in a sleepy countryside town. It was addressed to a Mr. Silas Reed at a post office box in a bustling, anonymous city 2 hours away. My blood didn't run cold, it simmered. This was the crack. The first fissure in the beautiful, serene mask she presented to the world, to my father. I became a ghost, a curator of her deceit. I noted the frequency of the letters, every Tuesday and Friday, like clockwork. I learned the postman's schedule. And when the opportunity arose, I became a thief. Using a trick I'd read about, I carefully steamed open a letter over a kettle, the wax seal loosening its grip without breaking. The letter inside was not a friendly update. It was not addressed to an aunt. "My dearest Silas," it began. "The walls of this beautiful cage are closing in another week. Arthur is kind, so kind it's suffocating. He speaks of legacy, of building things that last. He has no idea the only thing he's building is my prison. I play the part, the devoted widow, the gracious stepmother. The boy watches me, you know. He has his mother's eyes. Judgmental. The funds are moving slowly. He's cautious. But the trust is almost finalized. Once it's in my name, the final act begins. Our paradise awaits. Be ready. Yours, always and forever, Isabel." Isabel, not Isabella. The name was a punch to the gut. The funds. The trust. The final act. This wasn't a lonely woman writing to a relative. This was a con artist, playing the long game. My father wasn't just a husband, he was a mark. His kindness was a weakness to be exploited. And I was a judgmental obstacle. Rage, cold and sharp, replaced the simmering anger. But like the narrators in the stories I'd learned from, I knew a raw, emotional confrontation would be useless. She would cry, she would weave a story of a misunderstood pen pal, a fictional brother. And my father's faith in her would shatter me, not her. My revenge would not be one of exposure, but of redirection. I would use her own web to trap her. I began my own correspondence. I created an anonymous email address. I studied her language from the stolen letter, the melodrama, the self-pity, the calculated affection. "My dearest Isabel," I typed, my fingers cold on the keys. Your letter chilled me. This boy you speak of, is he a threat? We cannot risk our paradise. We must be more careful. No more letters to the P.O. box. It's too risky. Burn this after reading. Await my new instructions. Your Silas. I held my breath for days. The following Tuesday, no letter was written. She was restless, checking her phone, her carefully constructed composure fraying at the edges. My father noticed her anxiety. Everything all right, darling? Just a headache, Arthur, she said, her smile strained. Nothing to worry about. She had taken the bait. The ghost of Silas was now under my control. I sent another email, guiding her, feeding her paranoia. I told her the trust was being investigated, that my father's lawyers were asking questions. I made her doubt her own safety. The final email was my masterpiece. Isabel, the time has come. We must accelerate the plan. Arthur must sign over the power of attorney. Tell him you're handling a family emergency, an inheritance. Use his love for you. His pity. Bring the documents to the old Riverside Inn, room 217, tomorrow at 3 p.m. I will be waiting. Our future starts now. The stage was set. I went to my father that evening, my heart a drum in my chest. I didn't show him the stolen letter. I didn't speak of Silas. I simply said, Dad, I think Isabella is in some kind of trouble. She's been so anxious. I overheard her on the phone, something about a family emergency and power of attorney. It sounded serious. I'm worried she's being coerced. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the desire to protect her warring with a dawning horrible suspicion. The seed was planted. The next day, at 2:55 p.m., I stood with my father in the manager's office of the Riverside Inn. A place of dusty velvet and faded grandeur. The manager, looking nervous, brought up the live security feed for the hallway outside room 217. We watched the screen. At 3:02 p.m., Isabella appeared. She was dressed not in her usual elegant attire, but in a simple, forgettable coat. In her hand was a leather folder. My father's breath hitched. He recognized it. It was the folder containing the power of attorney documents he'd reluctantly signed that morning, after her tearful story about a sick, secret relative. She looked up and down the empty hallway, her face a mask of nervous anticipation. She knocked softly on the door of room 217. It was, of course, locked. I had rented it for this single, perfect moment. She knocked again, more insistently. Then she pulled out her phone, presumably to text Silas. She stared at the screen, waiting for a reply that would never come. The confusion on her face slowly morphed into dawning, absolute terror. She was alone, in a shabby hotel, holding the evidence of her betrayal, waiting for a ghost. My father made a sound, a low groan of pure, undiluted pain. He had seen it all. The lie, not told in words, but performed in heartbreaking, silent clarity. Who is she waiting for, Liam? He whispered, his voice shattered. I don't know, Dad, I said, the truth a weapon I chose not to wield fully. But it's not her Aunt Clara. We drove home in a silence more profound than any we had ever shared. He didn't scream. He didn't cry. When Isabella returned an hour later, her story already forming on her lips. He was waiting in the living room, the empty leather folder on the coffee table between them. The family emergency, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Is it resolved? She faltered. Arthur, it's complicated. Who is Silas, Isabel? He asked. The name, her real name, spoken in his voice, broke her. She crumpled. The whole sordid tale came out, not of a passionate affair, but of a cold, financial plot. Silas was her partner, in crime and in life. They had targeted my gentle, wealthy father. The letters were their ledger, their lifeline. My revenge was complete. It had been a silent, surgical strike. I had not confronted her. I had led her to confront herself, to stand alone in a hallway of her own making, and reveal the truth to the one person she never wanted to see it. My father looked at me as she packed, his eyes holding a universe of grief and a terrible new understanding. You knew, he stated. I suspected, I replied. Why like this, Liam? The same question, the same devastation. Because you had to see it for yourself, I said, my voice soft. You would never have believed me. He nodded, the motion heavy with the weight of the truth. The ghost of the perfect wife was gone, exorcised not by a dramatic showdown, but by an unanswered knock on a door. The house was ours again, but it was filled with the chilling silence of a battle won through deception, a mirror of the very deceit I had sought to destroy. I had proven my point, and the victory, as always, tasted like ash.